Fish food,
fish food, fish food, and more fish food. So if you're like me and you've collected an abundance of fish food, let's take a little bit of each and turn it into something new and useful. Stick around and find out how. Alright YouTube, if you're like me and you've collected an abundance of fish food that you're no longer feeding, maybe it's getting close to the expiration date, or maybe your fish's needs have changed, like in the case of my severums. I started them out with this North Fin food, these 3 different types, but I started out with the 1mm size, okay? I got these fish when they were small, about the size of a quarter, and now the bigger ones are pushing 6 inches or larger. This 1mm food is way too small to feed my big severums now. But I don't want to throw this stuff away. This stuff is pretty expensive, but it's also excellent food. I've got at least half a bag of each of this and this here. And I don't want that stuff to go to waste, so I'm going to repurpose some of the food here, along with some of the other food I have. Maybe this big bag of blackworm flakes. You know what? I bought this when I had my discus, and I never opened it until I set it back up with the severums and the acaras, but this big huge bag of blackworm flakes, there's no way I'm going to go through that. Same thing back here in the storage room. I have a leftover bag of freeze-dried blackworms that I used to feed my discus. Well, I no longer keep discus, and I really don't feed these to my new fish, so let's take these and let's repurpose those. Same thing with this big bag of vegetable sticks with calcium. I used to feed this to my shrimp. Now I do have some shrimp now, but they don't need, I don't know how much this weighs, half a pound? Yeah, this is a half-pound bag, and it's barely been touched. So let's take some of that and reuse that. I've got another bag of blackworm flakes back here. I've got a bag of bloodworm flakes. And then I've got some multi-worm sinking sticks. I don't need that huge bag. So how about if we take some of these excess foods, the foods that's too small that I no longer feed, or some of it that's getting up there in age, like these blackworms here and these bloodworm flakes, how about if we repurpose them and turn them into something new and different that we can feed our fish right now, especially these plecos here, those L134s and the L260s. That's right, how about if we take some of this food, but let's mix it up a little bit. Let's toss in some fresh ingredients like peas and zucchini and sweet potato, and let's make our own DIY gel food. Alright YouTube, so I was grocery shopping in the fish room, and here's the list of ingredients that we're going to put in this concoction. We have some blackworm flakes, which is also in this bag here, so we'll toss in some blackworm flakes, bloodworm flakes. We'll toss in some North Fin cichlid, North Fin veggie, North Fin krill pro, and then we have this freeze-dried blackworm cubes that we no longer use, these calcium veggie sticks from Ken's Fish, and we have an extra package of Discus Bio Gold, some multi-worm sinking sticks, a free sample package of Aquarium tropical flakes. Yeah, we'll toss it in. And I've got some bloodworms here and some cyclops. Now, in addition to the prepared foods, I'm going to toss in some fresh ingredients. Fresh zucchini, unsalted green beans, and fresh frozen peas. And then I have some blanched sweet potatoes. And what I also like to do is I have some of this Vitachem. I'm just going to toss in maybe a dozen drops of that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to mix all that in a high-speed blender. And then we're going to take some gelatin and we're going to bind it all together. So let's get started. Alright YouTube, so I've switched microphones to give me a little bit more flexibility and movement here as I blend the concoction together. But there's no exact science in this, and every time I make this gel food, I know it's always a little bit different. Some of the ingredients are the same, but last time I didn't toss in this sample package of Aquarium flakes. I didn't use zucchini last time, so I mean, it's always going to be a little different, and there's real no science of how much of this I use versus how much of that and how much of this. I just put stuff in the blender cup here until it's about halfway or maybe a little bit higher than halfway. Now, there's two very important, critical, crucial points that I need to make if you're going to be successful making your own gel food. First and foremost, and this is the most important, when you make this, it's best to do it when your wife or husband are not home. Just trust me on that. Just trust me. Number two, it's always better to err on the side of adding too much gelatin than not enough. I think each package of this is good for two cups of liquid. So when we're done, measure out how much liquid you end up with and then double up on the gelatin. If you don't add enough gelatin, the gel food's going to fall apart real rapidly and break down in your aquarium really quick, and it's going to cause a mess. Okay? So you'll end up having to do a water change, clean your filters, all that. So it's always better to add more gelatin than you think you need. And in my case, I always double up. So when I'm making a small batch like this, where I might end up with like 2 cups of liquid, I'm going to use 2 packages of gel food. Now I think rather than just adding the bloodworms and the blackworms in there and mixing it up so it turns into a powder, I think I'm going to leave these a little more whole. So I'm going to thaw out some bloodworms and I'm going to start soaking some of the blackworms. So then when the gel food is mixed up, I can just take these whole bloodworms and whole blackworms and just kind of mix it up into the concoction. So let's do that, and then we're going to start cutting our fresh veggies, and we'll get our fresh veggies added. Okay, so I have the freeze-dried California blackworm cubes in this little dish of water, and they are rehydrating. And then I put 2 cubes of frozen cyclops and a nice big chunk of frozen bloodworms in here. And we're gonna let those continue to thaw, and we'll add that into the mixture after it's been blended up. Okay, so now we need to add just a little bit of water to help mix it up and blend it together. All right, there you go. And always, always sample what you're feeding your fish. Kidding. All right, so we're going to take our mix. We are going to turn the stove on, and we are going to pour our mix into the pan there, or into the pot. And now, depending on the consistency of this, you may or may not need to add some additional liquid, some water. It's not going to hurt to have a little more water in there. All right, so what we need to do is we need to get this to a boil, and once this gets to a boil, we're going to be adding in, I'm going to go with 2 packages of gelatin. This looks to be about 2 cups of liquid. So I'm going to disregard the instructions on the gelatin, and I'm going to double that up and do 2 packages. Just about there. Time to add in the blackworm for the bloodworms. And we have our blackworms completely rehydrated, and we're just going to mix them in as well and just give them a good stir. All right, and now that the mixture has been heated up adequately, we are going to toss in our 2 packages of gelatin and mix that up nice. So when you get the gelatin in there, you want to just keep mixing it up for a while. You do have some time to work with this. It doesn't set right away, but you just want to make sure that there's no big clumps of gelatin in there. You want to make sure you get it all broken up until you get a nice smooth mixture. And then there's a couple ways you can do it. You could just pour this into like a Ziploc bag and lay it flat, and it'll kind of flatten out by itself. Then you'll have a nice big flat sheet. What I like to do is I just pour in an empty container that I know my wife's never going to use again. So I'm going to pour that in here, and then we're going to take this and we're going to either set it outside or set it in the fridge. And it needs a couple hours to set. Really letting it sit overnight and set is much better. Okay, so while this is setting, I'm going to clean up the kitchen, do the dishes, and destroy the evidence. Alright YouTube, well it's been about 3 hours since I've made the DIY gel, so it's had plenty of time to set. And what I want to do now is compare it to the texture and the firmness of the Repashy. Alright, so I'm just going to put a little bit of pressure on each one. This is the Repashy over here. And then this is the DIY gel food. I don't know how well you can see that. The Repashy is actually breaking up a little bit more under about the same pressure. So this actually looks like it's holding up a little bit better than the Repashy, but I'm not implying it's better than Repashy in general. I'm still going to feed Repashy. But as far as the texture and consistency goes, it seems to hold up as good, maybe slightly better. But the true test is going to be the taste test with the fish. So let's check it out. Alright, so there you have it, DIY gel food, real similar to the Repashy. Now, I'm not advocating that this is going to be a replacement for Repashy. Personally, I'm going to continue to feed both. But I just like to take that excess food that I have laying around. If you're like me, you have a bunch of it, find another way to use it, find another way to repurpose it and still get it fed to your fish. And then the nice thing about this is we also tossed in a lot of those fresh ingredients, the peas, the zucchini, the beans, and the sweet potato. But anyways, give it a shot. You might be surprised how well your fish like it. Well, that's it, folks. Hit the like button on your way out. If you haven't subscribed, I'd appreciate it if you'd consider. Put any questions, comments down below. And like always, until the next one, we'll catch you later.